Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Mike Steckline with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. Today, a special treat. Friend and colleague, Dr. Sami Bahri, also known as the world's first lean dentist, agreed to give us some time, and it's a real treat to hear him again. I first learned of Dr. Bahri's work many years ago. We were presenting at a meeting, and he let me come over to his office and see the work that he was doing. So it was a great example of going from a lot of the theory and knowledge that he was presenting to see it in action. So I really benefited from that. And last year, attended a conference where he was doing a breakout session, and I learned so much the first session, I went back the second session and learned even more. So I'm very pleased that he said yes to this, and I know everyone's going to benefit from what he's got to share today. Little housekeeping details. The phones are on mute, but if you have questions, you can use the chat function to ask questions. We will have time later in the webinar to unmute the phones, and we can talk and hear your questions directly. So right now it's going to be myself and Sami who are going to be talking, but we'll unmute later. It is being recorded, so you'll able to get the link and listen and watch later, or share it to others that couldn't participate today. And Sami has agreed to share copies of the slides for today's presentation, so we'll follow up with that as well. Just a quick background on how I'm thinking about the presentation we'll hear today. On your slide, you should see the model that we talk about as far as a sustainability model for continuous improvement. And the model on the right is part of the velocity model, and it shows a connection between the guiding principles and how people use those to design systems. And I've just identified in red, when I think about the information you're going to hear today, what were some of the key principles that I heard and saw, and certainly all of them are going to be featured. But I think you'll agree that you'll hear a lot about lead with humility, learn continuously, certainly, providing value to the customer, and then the focus on process. The presentation, a lot of it is about flow, and so, of course, flow and pull value will be featured. And I also notice embrace scientific thinking, as Dr. Bahri talks about how he developed this and how he went between the problems and countermeasures and how he came up with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn control over to Dr. Bahri, and he's going to show his slides, and we'll be able to see his presentation, and then we'll come back to me a little bit later. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sami Bahri. Sami, you've got the audience.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me. And I thank everybody for being there to listen to how we implemented lean in our dental practice. Before we start, though, I would like to start with two definitions that would make the rest of the presentation more understandable for you to understand where I'm coming from. The first one would be how we determine goals in the lean environment. We have two kinds of goals. We have true north goals that are direction giving. So we know that we will never reach those goals 100%, but as long as we are moving along that path, then we are in the right direction. The second kind is intermediate goals, as you see on the bottom of the screen. Intermediate goals are daily goals that, to the contrary, have to be achievable, but as long as they're on the path of what you see down there, 0 defects, 100% value added, 1-by-1 flow, 100% knowledge, 100% customer satisfaction. Those we cannot reach, but we want to be improving along those paths. So when I talk in the rest of the presentation about 1-by-1 flow, or what we call one patient flow, we all understand that I know I cannot reach it all the time, but as long as I'm moving in that direction, we're doing fine. The second thing I would like to talk about is the theories and the practice of how we manufacture things, how we make things, whether it's a car, whether it's a patient treatment, whatever it is. In the literature I have studied since the 70s, the 80s, I found that we know only two ways for making things. The first one is batch and queue. And here you see four groups of people in their own departments, and they're manufacturing each one kind of piece of puzzle. And then when the time comes, they will go to an assembly line and then assemble these pieces together. This way improves productivity, but it has its own problems like everything else. Let's say we had a defect in the yellow part and we manufactured 1,000 of them, then we will know about the defect only after we assemble them, which creates a lot of waste. The second way would be one-piece flow. One-piece flow, you make one, make a second one, try to fit them together. If you see a defect, you correct it before you manufacture a second yellow one or a second gray one. So in what we do, we're always in between. We're always doing a little bit of batch and queue, a little bit of one-piece flow. One-piece flow is more difficult to achieve, but it's 2 to 4 times more productive than batch and queue, according to the book Lean Thinking. So the closer you are to one-piece flow, the more productive you are. People have experimented with these theories over time. We used to be craftspeople, and then in 1776, you had Adam Smith who came up with the division of labor, and that's how functions were created. That's how we have a dentist, and then a front desk assistant, and then we have a hygienist and a flow manager. That improved productivity, according to him, by 240%. But it created other problems. We were manufacturing a lot of things, and we had quality problems. So they were returning for quality problems, and that's why around the 1900s, a little bit before, a little bit after, you had Taylor, for instance, who created time studies, and Gilbreth, who created motion studies. What's particular about that era is that we were looking at the worker. So we were taking a timer, and we were taking a camera, and we were looking at the worker and seeing how they're doing it and making it more efficient. Obviously, that improved productivity, but the problem with it is that we were making the operations more efficient, but some of the operations were not necessary to be done in the first place. To know which ones are necessary and which ones are not, we go to the era around 1945, 1940, where you had people like Deming, Ohno, and Shingo, and Ford. Those people, instead of looking at the worker, they started looking at the process, at the product itself. What's happening to the product? And that's what lean management is about. It's what's happening to the product and timely delivery. Now, if you take cost, quality, timely delivery, and safety, you have the 4 dimensions that you need to control in a business to have it productive and safe at the same time. When we were learning management in general and lean management in particular, we went through 3 phases, and I thought I would organize this presentation accordingly. In the first phase, we had to learn something. We had some preliminary knowledge to acquire, and that's going to be our first part of the presentation. In the second phase, you have Kaikaku. This is a German word for radical improvement. I apologize for using foreign words, but I'm trying to stay true to what you see in the lean literature. So if you encountered this word, you would know it, that it's the same thing I'm talking about. So Kaikaku is how we changed our business. So we would apply the knowledge that we acquired. And once you had that established, you're going to go into a continuous phase improvement that will never end. All of that, after you learn it, after you apply it, you're going to find that your leadership style is going to change accordingly. So let's go ahead and start with what I think the preliminary knowledge should be. First idea is about capital turnover. Why is it important? Because we want to run our business with not a lot of cash, not a lot of capital. So if we are manufacturing something that costs $10 and we want to manufacture 10 of those, we have two ways. Either we borrow $100, manufacture the 10 and wait until we can sell them, or the other way would be to take those $10, manufacture something very quickly, sell it, get the $10 back with profit, use the same $10 to do the second one. Now, when you do it fast like that, in industrial engineering, that's called lead time reduction. As a dentist, I did not know what lead time was, and I did not know how to reduce it. So in one of Ohno's books, I found that lead time is really from order to cash. And what he said, all we're doing is taking the timeline from when somebody places an order to when it's over and done with, and we're reducing that. We're reducing that time by eliminating waste. So here, I am facing many variables as somebody who doesn't know industrial engineering. The first one is what is lead time really in dentistry, and what is waste, and how do we reduce lead time? So we translated it into from the first call to when our patient is totally healthy. And we want to reduce that by eliminating waste. So I started looking at ways of reducing lead time. In one of the books by Shigeo Shingo, one of the creators of the Toyota production system that became lean later, he said something very interesting. He said that if you do three things: leveling, one-piece flow, and synchronization, and you take a process that has anything you manufacture with 10 steps, you can reduce your lead time 500 times. That means to me that if I'm treating your mouth in 500 days and I apply these, now I'll be able to treat it in 1 day. So I wanted to try it. Then he said something interesting too. He said, if you apply SMED, which is single minute exchange of dyes, and we're going to talk about that later, you can treat to demand, which means to me, if you call me with a toothache, I'll be able to take you right in, do your root canals, do your crown, and you'd be done that same day. So when I have promises like that, I needed to try, but I didn't know where to start. So where do I want to start? Who did it before me? And obviously, it was the famous Ohno who started the Toyota production system. And that's what he said. He said, I thought of one operator care for many machines and also different types of machines. See, this is important because he had tried with somebody working on many machines of the same kind. It didn't work. But different types of machines would be like my front desk is not only front desk. It means they need to help me in the back too. That's cross-training. It means that the assistant who works chair side needs to be able to help me at the front desk. That's cross-training again, and flexibility with the staff. He said in the same paragraph, the first step was to establish flow in the machine shop. So where do we start? We start in the machine shop. My machine shop was the dental chair. It wasn't the insurance department. It wasn't the front desk where we make appointments. It wasn't somebody recalling our hygiene patients. It was wherever we are treating the patients. As an experiment, I arranged the various machines in the sequence of machining process, so that's one-piece flow. I understood I had to pursue one-piece flow. So we went to the office and we tried to do one-piece flow. I put this as a diagram here for you to be able to follow me because it can get a little complex later. So following one-piece flow, we took every one of these principles and we tried to understand what they mean to industrial engineers first. Then we tried to translate it into dentistry, and then we tried to find a way to apply it. So here you have one-piece flow. It's making and moving one piece at a time. So how do we make and move one piece at a time in dentistry? We thought if one piece is the patient, and that patient is making an appointment, then we need to finish everything with that patient in one appointment. So it would be one appointment with all providers, not one appointment for hygiene and then come back for dentistry. It's probably one appointment where they have their hygiene, their cleaning, and where they would have their dental work made, their insurance filed, their appointment made, all in one appointment with no gaps. So once you go in, we need to take care, always value added. So the concept is something like this. The treatment is continuously moving and the caregivers come to you. So we want you to stay in the office just the time it takes me to treat your teeth. So if it takes me 2 hours to treat your teeth, my goal is to have you in the office for 2 hours. Who benefits from that? Everybody, right? And that's what's beautiful about lean management. You know, I can tell you what I'm doing because you are benefiting from it, and I am too. So it's a very honest approach to treatment. In reality, you have seen the arrow move, but the patient doesn't move. The treatment does. See, the patient stays in the chair. The caregivers would come to you, and when you're done with the last one, you just go home. You don't stop at the front desk. Again, we want you to stay only the time you need to be treated. So we tried one visit treatment. It didn't work. So I'm telling you it didn't work before you tell me it doesn't work, right? So setups were taking too long. And usually in any business, if you try to do one piece flow, setups are going to be a big hindrance, a big obstacle. So what did we do? Here, let me talk to you about setups first. Setups, you have the small s here. If I'm working on tooth number A1, and I'm doing a filling, and then it turns out to be deeper and it needs a root canal and a crown, I would have to change my instruments. We used to have a lot of instruments and supplies in the room, and they were procedure specific. So once we changed procedures, we had to change setups. It might take us 5 minutes, but when you're very busy, it was very discouraging. So we would ask the patient to come back. The big S is the setup between patients. If I'm treating one patient and now we're changing, we have to disinfect the room, we have to sterilize the instruments, it takes a little bit longer. So we had to work on both of those over time until we could minimize them. So here you have setup time reduction, that's our next step. And SMED that I had mentioned in the previous slide, in one of the previous slides, is single minute exchange of dies. It has an interesting story behind it. When Toyota started doing one-piece flow, they called a guy by the name of Shigeo Shingo, and they said, our changing dies, which is the presses to have the body of the car, is taking, some people say 12 hours, some people say 4 hours, I'm not sure on that. But they told him, we need to be able to get it under an hour and a half to be able to compete with the Germans. So he didn't know how to do it. He met with the workers and they found a way. They got it down to below an hour and a half. And then they called him 6 months later and they said, that's not working. It needs to be below 15 minutes. Now we're going from 12 hours to 15 minutes. So he met again with the workers and they were able to do it actually in less than 10 minutes. That's why he called it the single minute exchange of dies. So that dramatic change was very inspiring to me. So we went and studied how you do it in dentistry to where you could change between procedures very quickly and how you could change between patients very quickly. And I studied with my staff the principles that Shingo has established because nobody knew that before him. And some of the things we have learned is that you need to right size the materials and put them around you to where you can reach them. So what you see in this picture is our small bins that we divided. We put dividers in them, and we took everything from the tubs that we used to use. Those are materials that some of them would stay in the patient's mouth, and some of them, like brushes, are just used one time and thrown away. But we put them behind me to where I can reach them even without an assistant. And we went for variety, and that's very important for any business. We went for variety, where 90% of what I use is behind me. And it's very well organized with addresses to where anybody can replenish it. We want to reduce training. If anything you want to remember is that training is very costly. As a dentist, it takes me so many years to become a dentist. That's training. The assistant has to go to school. That's training. You know, if you take it at the daily level, we need to eliminate training as much as we can. We did the same thing with the instruments. Here you see this cassette. We call it a cassette for the instruments. We used to have 5 per room, and we consolidated everything. We found that we had 2 mirrors, for instance, 3 pairs of pliers. We removed all of those, and over the years we started simplifying to where now we have 2 cassettes. We have 3 cassettes for 2 rooms only. So we don't have to manage instruments a lot. And we use this for 90% of what we do. All of that we have learned from Shingo's theories. This is a cart that you can see that contains all the materials that we need in the rooms. So we trained somebody. We simplified it to the point where somebody without any training could replenish 10 rooms for us in 10 minutes. So these are the lessons you can learn from somebody like Shingo, who has studied single-minute exchange of dyes. One other theory, he talks about internal changeover and external changeover. Internal changeover, the patient has to be out of the room. External changeover, we can do it while the patient is still in the room. So let's say I did a root canal and a crown, but I'm just done with the root canal. So we take all of that and we clean it and we sterilize it while the patient is still in the chair. And you can keep adding to that until on the left, as you can see, this is a plastic cover to the chair. This is the only thing we cannot clean when the patient is in the chair. So if we're moving between patients now, all we have to do is just change that and we can receive the second patient. Before SMED, we used to set up for our patients. My assistant made it messier than it usually is, just to impress you in the picture. But right now, all we have to do is have the cassette right there, because our setup is in the cabinet as you have seen it. So here we are finishing patient A. You see A1 and A2 in one sitting, patient B in one sitting, and in between we have a very short setup time. That is as close as we can get at this point to one-piece flow. So what happened when we did all of that? We learned how to change over the rooms very quickly, and you remove all that setup time, you'll find that you have extra capacity. In practice, it means I would finish my patient, stand in the hallway waiting for patients, and one day I thought, I'm going to ask my front desk to call someone who's on the waiting list. But the patient who was leaving my chair had still some teeth to be done, to be treated. So I thought, why didn't I ask that patient? On the next patient, I did it. I said, you still have 2 teeth to be fixed. Do you want me to treat them for you right now? They said, yes. So here, we established flow in the dentist part. You know, everything that I needed to do, I would propose to my patients to do it in that same visit. And I was very comfortable. And at the end of the visit one day, I told my patient, congratulations, your mouth is totally healthy. Now you need to make only your appointment for the hygienist to clean your teeth. And I thought, as I was saying that, I thought, why am I saying that? Why don't I ask the hygienist to clean their teeth right now? So we needed to include hygiene in the flow. I went and spoke to the hygienist, and she said she's willing to do it whenever a patient comes. So, but that was more complicated, because now you're dealing not with one provider, you're dealing with 2. We had to learn how to level the schedule and how to work in a mixed treatment, mixed production environment. For that, there was some knowledge, and here we go to this square here where we have the leveling. Industrial definition of leveling is going to be equal quantities produced in equal time intervals over a specified period of time, so which means equalize the work, equalize the field. As we translated it, it was how fast does the patient want it, and how fast can I do it? So we had to balance that. We had to balance the load on our employees. How do you do it? When we studied it, we found that industries do it according to something called takt time. So what is takt time? I'm sure most of you know takt time, but just for the benefit of the rest, I would like to just give an example. If I had to clean 1,000 patients, if we needed to clean their teeth, 1,000 patients, just imagine those patients are willing to come exactly when we tell them to come, and we put them in one line. I would say, how frequently would each one ask for a cleaning? So how frequently? We took all the minutes that we worked during a year, and we divided that by the number of the most frequent procedure that we do. And that gives us the takt time. So what was the most frequent procedure we do? It was cleanings. So here I want to open a little parenthesis. In a high mix, low volume business, it is very hard to decide how to give a pace, because takt means pace, the pace of business. How do you give a pace to your business? You need to have a pacemaker. A pacemaker is something that you have to choose. You're going to say, this is going to be the basis of my schedule, and I'm going to build everything around it. I have studied 3 or 4 theories, and I found the simplest one is really to take the most frequent, because that's the one that will require the most setups and cleanups. The most frequent in our practice by far, and I assume in every dental practice, is going to be the cleanings. Now that we're mixing cleanings with the rest of the treatment, then it needs to become the basis of our scheduling. So we took the cleanings, that was the number of cleanings we performed in 1 year. We divided the number of minutes we worked by that, and we got the number of 26. That means if we put our patients in line, every 26 minutes, there's a patient asking for a cleaning. Now the next would be, can we perform a cleaning in 26 minutes? So we timed the hygienists. We timed each hygienist approximately 15 to 20 times, and we took the lowest repetitive time, and that was around 20 minutes. So every 26 minutes a patient is asking for a cleaning. We can do it in 20 minutes. So if my hygienist were like a robot who never gets sick, never gets tired, she would be able to do all of these. One person would be able to do these. We had 3 at that time, and one of them had a baby. She had to go on maternity leave, and it was a good opportunity for us to test the system. So since it takes 20 minutes to do a simple cleaning, instead of an hour, we gave it 30 minutes, and we had somebody help the hygienist, and we were able to benefit from that. Now, to level your schedule, we found that you have to go through 3 major components. The first one, you have to identify your value streams. Value streams, think of it as when you go to the supermarket, you have one lane that says 10 items or fewer. And why do they have that? Because it's simpler to them. It's a simple operation. They want it to go fast. They don't want you to be standing there in line. And it's probably for you, but it's also for them. They don't want you to clutter the system. So here we tried to divide our work similarly, and we went by how many providers you're going to see. Either the hygienist alone, that's simple. Hygienist and dentist, it's more complicated. If you need the lab and the specialist, those are different value streams. And then I added 2 slides after that, one to show you what I mean by moving from batch to flow, and the second one to show you what I mean by cross-functional barriers. They're very simple, but I want you to connect those to this slide if you can mentally. Batch scheduling, you look at dentist 1 is me. In chair number 1, I used to do anything complicated like crowns, bridges, root canals. In the second chair, I used to do amalgams, which is silver fillings or white fillings or extractions, and so forth. I used to see my patient either for an hour or for an hour and a half, and then they would have to come back. So I had a unit of time that I would schedule. I was assuming that the patients would get tired after that and they wouldn't want to be here. But when I asked my patients, I found that they really prefer to get done very quickly. They don't want you to keep them in the chair forever. So here you see in the second part of the slide where it says flow scheduling, I say patient 1, patient 2, patient 3, but in reality, if I have one patient who needs the whole morning, then I will give that patient the whole morning. So now we're instead of thinking unit of time, we're thinking one patient at a time. Okay, the second slide I promised you is how we cross the functional barriers. You know, to change habits in a practice is not easy. The hygienists were used to having their own rooms. The assistants were used to be in charge of certain rooms. So we needed to cross that functional barrier between mainly the hygienist and the dentist, meaning that it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. What matters is that you go to that patient and treat that patient wherever they are. So as a first step, we identified some patients where we could find little cavities here, little cavity that would take 5-10 minutes. Then I would go to the excuse me. Here we identified some patients I was treating, and then I asked the hygienist if they were due for a cleaning, if she was willing to come and clean them, and we did that. And patients started liking it, and they would tell their spouses, and the spouses would come and ask us to clean their teeth at the same time that they're being treated. Then at the second phase, the hygienist would call me if she found on you a small cavity, and I would go into her room and fill that cavity. And then at the end, we thought, hey, why call it hygiene chairs and dental chairs? It's all patient chairs, and it got all mixed up. It took us probably a couple months to get to that point. So here we are, we have the hygienist and the dentist working on the same patient. It's mixed treatment. We don't separate anymore. Once you get in the chair, we try to do everything we can. Now the appointments are a little bit longer. I'm spending more time with the patient. And then when I get up, and it happened right away the first day, I didn't know where to go. The hygienist didn't know where to go. It was totally chaotic. It was fear in the eyes of everybody. What should we do? So I called for an emergency meeting, and we thought, what do we do? It's a synchronization problem. How does Toyota solve synchronization problems? And what they do, they have a person watching the line. They have a person watching the line and making sure that value added is happening all the time. I thought, hey, we need something similar. What should we call it? This should be someone watching the flow of treatment for our patients. So we're going to say patient treatment flow manager. How about that? So patient care flow manager. So we created that position instantly, and we designated one person. We said, can you do that? She said yes. Okay. So now when I get up from the patient, from treating the patient, I have someone who has thought already the process for me and who can tell me where I need to go. So this is the synchronization part. We need to synchronize. Before you can synchronize, and this slide is one of the ones I was talking to Mike about. It is a little bit loaded, but that's something I'm leaving here for a reference because he's going to make the slides available for you. What I'll explain it briefly. We need to plan first. We cannot just level. And to plan, we need to take the procedures that we have performed last year and the year before and the year before. If I see that over the years, we're performing 4,000 cleanings a year, plus or minus 10%, then why should I rush it and ask all the people, cram the people in my schedule? So we're going to level it. We're going to spread it over the schedule because it's going to be 4,000 anyway, unless we want to increase the business in some way. So from studying that, we study our tech time, and we create a template where anybody can take that template and make you an appointment. But that's not going to be 100% accurate. So on a weekly basis, we ask the providers to look at their schedule, and if they think that for some reason you need more time, they'll give you more time. If for some reason they think we gave you more time, then they'll shorten the appointment. And on a daily basis, because they're already working and they cannot look at their schedule, the flow manager is going to tell us that one person has canceled and we have replaced her with another person. The first one needed a filling and this one needed something more elaborate. So that's the theory behind it. That's the planning. For the execution, obviously, just in time, as you know, it is the right treatment, exact quantity, exact time. We need to find a way to send the provider to you whenever they are needed. If we send them before, the hygienist is still working on you and they're going to disrupt the work. If we send them late, then you've been waiting for them and it's not good either. So we need to work on just in time. We created the position of flow manager I just talked about. And how is she going to do it? How is she going to do it? Her job is really to supervise the flow of treatment. So you would see Candace watching the patients from behind their back and making sure everyone is having value added at all the time. If not, she is a trained assistant. She can go in there and help until somebody, so she enters the line until somebody is available. And she's also supervising to make sure that we know what waste we're generating and how we can improve it. So, flow manager, communication problems. What are the communication problems we encountered with that flow manager? The first day on the job, she wanted to tell us where to go, and I went to see her, and I found that we already had 2 hygienists and 2 assistants around her asking her where to go, and I was the 5th one. And she goes, I can't talk to everybody at the same time. And she was panicked, and we were not able to go anywhere we wanted. So we went back to the meeting room, and I said, how does Toyota do that? Well, Toyota, as soon as they know what needs to be happening to a car, they put a sticker on it that they call Kanban. And on that Kanban, you have the information that the next person needs to know. This way, you can give the information without really batching it and without having people assembling around you. So we thought, okay, let's create a piece of paper that we call Kanban, and it looks like this. You have swim lanes, you know, I don't know if you can read, but it says the patient name, the chair, the procedure, and we have time given and time needed. If they say, I gave you that at 9 o'clock, I need you there at 9:15. So they're giving me a little time to adjust, and I better be there at 9:15. So this way, we are doing the just in time that I was talking about in the other slide without really overloading the flow manager. Okay, now talking about this, after we applied that for a year, lean thinking results. What are the results we got? In lean thinking, James Womack and Daniel Jones say, in short, lean thinking is lean because it provides a way to do more with less human efforts, less time, less equipment, less space, while coming closer and closer to providing customers with exactly what they want. So we needed to measure ourselves, to compare ourselves to those results. Lead time, we measured it in 2 ways. The first one is a number of visits. In 2004, right before we started the lean efforts, it used to take me on an average 7 visits to get a mouth to be healthy. In 2014, it was a visit and a half, which means some people get their treatment right on the first visit, and some people have to come for another visit, because if we tried to do it in that first visit, we would be compromising quality. We tried to measure it in, excuse me, that should say days, a number of days, and not visits. A number of days. In 2004, it took me 203 days to treat a mouth, and here it's taken 10. Honestly, I'm not measuring anymore because we're going fast enough. Patients are very happy. Maybe we need to return to measuring that, but I think that's the 95% improvement, the 500 times improvement that Shingo had promised. Then we asked people, we surveyed 200 people. Were you scheduled promptly? 100%. Do you like one visit treatment? 96%. The 4% didn't like it because they had to pay more, because they had to come up with more money in one visit. And now we're dealing with an external company to solve that problem. Questions addressed completely. That was a very big concern to doctors. Do our patients feel like an assembly line, and are we answering their questions? So the survey is showing that obviously we are answering them at 98%. And here the golden question: would you refer friends and family? And 98% would. Actually, for the last couple of years, we have been voted #1 on Angie's List, and our reviews on the internet are now our biggest referral source, just from those services. We said, how would you rate our services? And we started with good, average, and poor. And they started scratching them and saying excellent. So we surveyed another 200 patients. And these are the results as you see them. So patients are pretty pleased with us. Doing more with less, production per visit. See, a new doctor in the office had produced 18% more, but she was new in the office. I produced 29% more. And there was a third doctor who said, Dr. Bahri, your system is working for you, but not for me. I'm spending most of my time surfing the internet and looking at my email. It was November. I said, well, in December, we're going to look at the numbers. If you really don't like it, you can go back to any system you want. And what we found was that she had really made 35% more per visit. And she had saved so many visits. And in a slide that's going to come up next, I will show you how many visits we have saved. As far as less human efforts, the dentists were 3. The hygienists, I talked about the one who had the baby, so we went down to 2. 2 assistants had a baby. I don't know what to say about that. So you had 3 people at the same time, and a dentist having babies. But we did not need to add anybody. We were able to handle the schedule without those people. Now they're back, but at that time, we didn't need to hire anyone. Here's the number, less time. Here's the number of patient visits. In 2005, we had 7,500 visits. In 2006, 5,600 visits. It just happened that our production in dollar amount was almost the same for the 2 years, but in 2006, we had almost 1,800 fewer visits with our patients. And that doctor I was talking about, she had 800 visits, fewer visits. Now, if you take some of the steps in those visits and multiplying by 1,800, here I wrote 11. This is where we find the time now to take you in our office and do the root canal and really work very slowly and still be productive. Less equipment, we were able to do all of that in 6 chairs instead of 10, which freed up a lot of time for hiring another dentist, but we did not do it. We just had more free time. We had 63 hours of chair time available if we wanted to hire another dentist at that time. Okay, so we went through the first 2 phases, and now we are in the phase of Kaizen, which is improving one-piece flow, meaning adding more and more people that we can treat in one visit. Let's talk about waste. What is waste? How do we improve one-piece flow through waste? An analysis of waste, according to Ohno and his colleagues, if you study the total motion, your total motion during a day, you'll see that a big chunk of it is wasted motion, that if you stop doing right away, nobody would notice it. You would just work less, and it wouldn't affect your business. That you can eliminate immediately. The second part is necessary motion. You have to do it to help people. But even if you analyze that, you'd see that some of it is incidental work. In our case, we used to prepare the crowns, take an impression, send them to the lab, and wait 2 weeks. And then we bought a CAD/CAM machine that would fabricate the crowns, cut the crowns for us in the office in 10 minutes instead of 2 weeks. And now I don't have to do it temporary to make it temporary anymore. I don't have to replace the temporary when it breaks, and you don't have to come back in 2 weeks. So the impression and sending it to the lab and the temporary is incidental waste. It's because of my system. If I change my system, I could remove part of it. And only a small part is value-added work, which means that the patient is coming for and the patient is willing to pay for. So that part on the left of this, needs to be improved through Kaizen all the time. Now, the problem with waste is that we talk about the 7 wastes in Lean, but as I studied Professor Mondin, he said, first you start by using too much time, too much space, too much equipment, and too many people. And then what that does, those people want to keep themselves busy. So they're going to do something too soon, too fast, or too much, which he calls overproduction. So you're producing something that you're paying for, but nobody wants. And once you have overproduction, you start having excessive supplies, excessive patients in treatment. You have the chairs full, but you have nobody to treat them, and they're waiting for you. And then you get the 7 wastes. So the 7 wastes are at the surface. But if we really want to remove the waste, we can't just look at motion, waiting, defects, and say, I'm going to eliminate motion. You need to go to the source. I'm telling you that because I've done it for 13 years with no results. I would see, okay, how can I stop the waiting? I'm not going to make him wait, but I haven't found a radical solution to waiting. So what's the problem here? The problem is what we need to focus on is flow. Once you have good flow in your practice, most of the waste is eliminated. See, it's like verifying X equals Y. You know, you want the points that verify this. You don't care about all the points that do not verify it. So let's focus on the ones that do verify the equation, which is flow in this case. So when you study the elements of flow, Gilbreth in 1912 said, what's happening to something? It's either being processed, inspected, transported, or waiting. That's it. One of the 4 things is going to be happening. Only processing is value added, and the others are waste. And then Ohno took that from him, and what did he say? He said, you engineers in production need to look at the 4 elements: processing, inspection, transportation, and waiting. And those affect, here we're going back to one of the first slides, those affect quality, safety, cost, and delivery. So what we want to do is really focus on processing, inspection, transportation, and waiting. And I want to finish with this diagram from Shigeo Shingo. Obviously, in this presentation, it's very hard for me to explain everything I want to explain about it. But what he says is when you take the 4 elements and you consider them into the patient experience, which is the patient says, they checked my teeth and they cleaned my teeth and they treated my teeth. You look at those 4 elements in one way and you try to eliminate them as much as possible through value engineering, improving the layout. And so the motto here is elimination. But you cannot eliminate everything. And it goes to the operations. Operations is what people need to do in order to make you an appointment. You said they made me an appointment, but the assistant is going to say, I asked about the name, I entered the name, I entered all the information about the insurance, and then I received the patient. And for you, it's just made an appointment. So processing is what the worker does. Excuse me, operations is what the worker does, and process or value stream is what you experience as a patient. And what Shingo said is you need to focus on the patient's experience. Again, I'm going back to that slide where I show you the history, where people, instead of focusing on the bottom part of the chart, although we're studying processing, transport, inspection, and delays, people want you to focus on the patient experience. If you're not in healthcare, on whatever your product is, and how you need to consider yourself like the product, and going from one step to the other, and looking whether you're receiving processing, transportation, inspection, and delay, and keep only the processing part. Well, I hope this presentation was useful to you, and I hope you have some questions for me.
Thanks, Sami. That was terrific. I've unmuted the phones if anyone has any questions, and we'll pause a bit.
Hey, Dr. Shimoka.
Hey.
Good.
Was there a question there? I have a question, Sami. So how are you continually working with your staff to continue to improve the work that you're doing?
Well, see, we learn by doing, which means we look at, as we're working, we might encounter a problem. I can give you, the best way is probably to give you an example. The hygienist says, you made him an appointment for a cleaning, which is 30 minutes. But actually, this is somebody who needed gum treatment, which is 45 minutes. So I don't have enough time. Why is the front desk making mistakes like that? So we bring that up in the morning meeting, and then we go to the front desk with the lady who made the appointment, and we say, how do you make your appointment? And she showed us that she had to go through 6 screens to find out what that patient needs. And when she's busy, it was really, she had no time to be very careful with that. So the whole staff put their heads together and made it to where whenever she clicks on that patient's name, the information gets to her right away. So in one click, she had very clearly what needs to be done. That's one of the examples, you know. Yeah. So we bring these problems that hinder flow every day and throughout the day, and we meet with the people who are doing the job, and we ask them, how can we improve that? And they always come up with better answers than mine. Actually, I don't know how they do their jobs, and they tell me what needs to be improved.
Okay, great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's super. Thank you for that. Does anyone else on the webinar have a question for Sami while we've got him?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Not too personal.
How do you get the buy-in that is needed in order to get everybody on board to do this work?
Okay. Well, it starts with me understanding that I don't know how to do the job. See, a lot of times lean practitioners talk about humility, that you need to be humble when you're talking to people. Well, if you don't know the answer, you have to be humble, right? That's humbling in itself. First, I tell them I don't know how to solve it. How do you want to solve it so it would make it easier for you while improving quality? So we always try to make it easier for them, and we get their input on how to make it easier. See, when the ideas are theirs, they want to prove them right. When the idea is yours, they want to prove you're wrong. Does it make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Here's a question from Jim. He says, how do you use visual management to run your business?
Visual management. See, the last slide that I showed, I don't know if I have access to the slides anymore.
I can put it back to you, sure thing.
Yeah. The last slide that I showed, you have all the steps that they need to provide, right?
I'm going to put it back up, and you can share your screen again. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. See, here, if you think about it, the value stream up there is the patient experience. And the patient experience is really what they need from us as providers. We make that visual through the Kanban that I showed you. They're going to tell me, you are needed in chair number 3 at 9:15. And now the time is 9 o'clock. So the flow of work is made visual through the Kanban. Now, once we go inside, and now you're in the operations part of this screen, we wanted to make all the steps that somebody needs to do, we wanted to make that visible. So we have cards that we flip up and down. When a step needs to be done, the card is red. When the step is done, the card is green. So that reminds me and my staff of all the steps that need to be done during your visit to the dentist. One of them would be, we will ask you to check your personal file to make sure, because people change addresses, they change insurance companies. Sometimes we have mistakes in the name, or in any letter that's wrong could cause problems if you're dealing with insurance companies and with healthcare. So we have you check on the file, and then once you check on the file, the assistant flips the paper down, the signal down. Now on that signal, we have all the standards. For instance, we have one for writing notes, and we say on the first line of the note, we want to write, abbreviate everything that's been done today to the patient. In the next paragraph, we want to describe it. We want to describe it in details. And on the last line, we want to write what the next visit is going to be. That's our standard. So we have our standards on those. That's one way. We have another signal that we put on top of the room. If you need any help in the room, you just put a red sheet of paper up there. I mean, a small card, not sheet of paper. A small card that is red. You put the red card. The flow manager will know that you need help in that room. So we help with the flow of things just with little signals. We have a card that could be red or green outside the room to tell you that this room is empty, but if the card is red, you cannot put a patient there because I haven't sterilized it yet. Something like that.
Okay,
Were you looking for something else?
Is Jim out there? Did that answer the question? I see a typed written question. Okay, Jim says yes. He's got a follow-up question about metrics and performance. I'm assuming the question is using visual management around how we're performing on the metrics. And perhaps it's how does everyone know how we're doing today or this month or this year? Are we ahead or behind?
We are not there yet.
Okay, so making things transparent as far as how we're doing as a business so everyone can see. Okay.
Well, the best thing, the closest thing I can tell you about it is our software itself has signals like when you get in the waiting room, we have a dot. It's like the traffic lights. We have a yellow dot that is here. If you're past your appointment time, it becomes red, and if you got you in the chair, it becomes green. So this is mainly what assistants and providers are interested in. Are we on schedule or not on schedule?
Right.
You know, maybe our business is not as complicated as bigger companies.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Were there any more questions for folks? Okay. Well, Sami, I appreciate your time today, and I know that you've written. It's the original book was called Follow the Learner, and the book you have now is The Lean Dentist. It's an update to the previous book, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and I know that the people from GBMP did a video with you. We were talking about that, so I can circulate information about those resources if people want to learn more about that. So, what's that?
I left my email on the last slide.
All right.
If anybody wants to ask me any questions, I'll be happy to.
I'll make sure everyone gets the email so they can have a direct correspondence with you. That's terrific and much appreciated. So here's what's going to happen next. The recording from today's webinar on our website, you can see it here, is going to be moved over to the recording section. So that'll be available for everyone, including those that were here today. The next webinar, we have a planning webinar for a session May 12th to talk to some people. This is for people in the Minnesota area that may be interested in this, but anyone else can participate around a follow-up to a presentation that I did on a topic called Where Tools Lead, Fools Follow, and want to learn a little bit more about that concept to take it into more of a workshop setting. There's also May 26th doing a continuing discussion of what I'm calling the Pracademic's Guide to Strategy Deployment. And we saw some of that today with Dr. Bahri's presentation and the few first slides. And so we're summarizing some of the learnings to date, and it's going to be available on May the 26th. June 16th, colleague, friend Mike Grogan has written a book called Unlocking the Habit Code, and he's agreed to do a presentation for us. I think people will find this interesting. He lives in the Philippines, so he's going to be doing it long distance, but he's willing to share his current thinking on that. And Mike's a great guy, and appreciate him taking the time to do that. On July 21st, friend and colleague Lou Fries is going to talk a little bit about natural leadership and the work that he's doing. And this is very interesting work as far as thinking about what do people need to do to help the correct systems emerge, and call it the inside work, working on the individual. And that's going to be very important. So very happy that Lou's able to do that for us. And then in September, Laura Brown, a friend and colleague from Memorial Care Health in California, is doing a presentation on leader standard work. And she's got some great insights to share on what she's learned and what she'd like to share with us that day. And as always, if anyone has an idea for something they'd like to hear about, or if they themselves have a story they'd like to share, just contact me and let me know, and we'll talk about a time to give us a presentation. And also you can join our LinkedIn group. You can see the information there. So I greatly appreciate Dr. Bahri spending the time and effort to put the presentation together for everyone, taking the time to listen today, and I hope everyone has a great day. And if you're traveling, travel safe. Have a good day and a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for participating.
Thank you, Mike.
You bet. Have a good day.
Have a good day.